Obviously, the increase in prices will, if this is sustained, increase investment in upstream exploration and development. But more broadly, I do believe we have been, to coin a phrase, mugged by reality here. And the world is now seeing what Alberta has been saying for years, that we must, as we have been blessed, as a rights-respecting liberal democracy with the third largest energy reserves on the face of the earth, that can be a force for good by allowing us to displace conflict oil from Russia and other dictatorships. So I think that this totally changes the policy context. We already had, in Washington, we already had a situation where a majority of both the Senate and House of Representatives, for example, have supported increased production in North America. I think that is now headed to becoming a supermajority. And so I think this completely changes the policy context. It obviously changes the price context. And let me be clear, I don't relish this. As Minister Tays said at his news conference the other day, he'd rather have $60 or $70 WTI than a conflict in Ukraine, than the invasion of that peaceful country. So we don't... This is not about Alberta cynically taking advantage of this of this gross invasion and political instability. This is Alberta saying that we can be part of a long-term solution. Now, I know some people out there are saying, well, you know, it takes years to get pipelines built and to get major energy productions in production, and that none of that's going to stop the 40-mile-long convoy of Russian tanks headed towards Kiev right now. True. But we also have to play the long game, just like Vladimir Putin has. Putin's invasion of Ukraine did not start a week ago. It started 8 years ago in Crimea and Donbass. For 8 years, he has been planning for this moment. We can certainly get much more of our energy to the rest of the world if we're determined about this in much less than 8 years. If the bad guys are willing to play a long game, using energy as their source of wealth, then maybe the good guys should too. Well, we clearly need certainty around Coastal GasLink so that LNG Canada gets completed on time, so we don't miss the boat on the next round of contracts for Asian LNG imports. Secondly, in Alberta, we are working with as you know, consortium called for the Rockies LNG project to see if we can be helpful, and we have raised this with the Government of Canada to collaborate with us on hopefully getting a second major West Coast LNG project to come to a positive final investment decision. And I have to have some frank words about the new policy of the Government of Quebec in this regard. In 2019, 2020, I and my office actually worked with a LNG project proposed for the North Shore of the St. Lawrence, Énergie Saguenay, and actually helped to make connections that had brought Berkshire Hathaway to the table for a prospective $5 billion investment in that project, because we thought ultimately would benefit Western Canadian producers. But in part, I think because of the uncertainty around the winter 2020 protests on Coastal GasLink and the political uncertainty that created, Berkshire Hathaway backed out and Énergie Saguenay. And now the Government of Quebec is saying that it will not permit any or facilitate any LNG, let alone domestic gas consumption. And Justin Trudeau has effectively granted a political veto to the province of Quebec over a prospective interprovincial oil pipeline, such as a revival of the Energy East concept. So we need the federal government to assert its jurisdiction over interprovincial pipelines. And frankly, I call on the Government of Quebec to be part of the solution to reducing European carbon emissions and eliminating Russia's stranglehold on European energy supplies by working with us to export responsibly LNG. I think that if private sector investors could see clear political and policy support that they would come back to the table for a potential major East Coast LNG project.